Okay, so now what we're going to do is add the ability to edit the users associated with a role in our view model. So first, let's create a new uh, in our application. So now first, let's create a new view model that will allow us to select and deselect users that will be added to our particular role. So go to Role, View Models, and add a new model. We'll call it Users Role View Model. Enter. Okay, so we have our user role view model. And we'll add the following properties. String user ID. This will be the user's unique ID. Next, we'll add the user's name. And finally, we will add a property, a bool, that states whether it's selected or not. Okay, and we will save that view model. Add it to the model's namespace instead of the view model's namespace. And finally, let's start implementing the functionality in our administration controller. So we'll go to our admin controller and scroll all the way to the bottom and add a new a new action method for initially viewing the page as well as viewing it after an update. So we'll create the first class, our action method, task action result, role ID. Okay, now we're going to, as you can see here, we're getting the role ID from our button. Now in our view bag, we're going to set the role ID to the view bag's object role ID. We're creating that. And if you could remember correctly, the view bag is what is used to pass information between the controller and the view. So you would do it like this. Okay, now we're going to pull the role based on the role ID. So wait, underscore role manager, find by ID async, and pass in the role ID. Ta-da, so now we have the role object from the role manager. Next, we're going to check if it's null. If it's not null, this code should look familiar because we just are rewriting it from our edit information. We're just going to be changing around a bit the edit action method. Is equal to role with ID is equal to role ID cannot be found, and then we will return view with that error message. And we're going to get the model now, since this is the first time we're viewing it. There will be a list of user role view model, and this is what the actual user will be seeing when they actually go to the page. What we're going to be displaying to them. And now we're going to iterate through all the roles in our system and display it. User and user manager, so we're pulling all the users. And we're going to create a new user view model, user role view model, to return to the page for each of those. Okay, user ID is equal to ID, and user name is equal to user.username. And boom. sync user.role.name is selected is equal to true. So what is this doing? We're just selecting the parameter in our user role view model is selected for each of the actual users returned that are in that role, and we're selecting to true. That way we'll know which users are in a particular role and which ones are not, and we'll be able to take appropriate action based on that. Otherwise, set it to false logically, because we don't want to set our checkbox. We're going to have a checkbox for each of the users. If they are not selected. Okay, and model.add the user role view model for each of the users iterated through. And so now that our model has been finished being updated, we're going to return the actual view with the model in it. Okay, so now we have finished our first get class that displays when we are viewing the actual edit users in role for the first time. Let's do the post. Quick async task by action result. Edit users in role. Model string role ID. Var role. So now we're going to pull in the role based on the role ID, but like before. Let's actually just grab all of the code from the get method. It specifies the get. Okay, and now let's modify it. So we're still going to be getting our role ID. It's not set to VBag. What else are we going to change? We're not going to be creating the enumeration anymore because that's passed in from the front end. Now instead of iterating through the users, we're going to just iterate through what we got from the front end. So instead of using a for each, we're going to use int I is equal to 0. This will allow us to access data within the actual model. I++. Okay. Let us now get the user for each of the items in the view model. So we'll get the actual user object for each of them. Async. No. Okay, so now we're going to write a bit of logic that's going to update our view model. So now we're getting the users. If we don't get a user back, so if the actual user is selected and the user is not in the role, square in, take the following action. We're going to add it to the role via the user manager. Add to role async, and we got user role.name. Okay, so we add it to the role if it's selected and it's not currently in the role. Next scenario that we'll have to compensate for is if the actual user is not selected and he is in the role. In that case, what we will do is the following. Ta-da! So we'll remove the user from the role. And finally, if none of those situations are true, we're going to go simply to the next element rather than modifying this current user. That way we won't have to do any additional operations. So now we will check if everything succeeded properly, and if it has, what we'll do is check if it's at the end of the loop. And if it's not, we continue. Otherwise, if it is, we're going to redirect the user to the edit roles page because the actual users in the role have been updated. Direct to action, edit role, and we're also going to be passing in, as we redirect, we need to pass in the role ID that it's currently being modified. So we'll pass it in from here since we already have it set. And boom, we are done. And in the worst case scenario, if all else fails and we don't know why, let's have an additional clause here. Return direct to action. Oh, actually, this is in case there were no roles modified. So we'll keep this outside the loop. So there were no changes or no users and roles or nothing added. Okay. Edit role and new ID is equal to role ID. And there we have it. Now all we have to do in order to finish implementing the edit role page, edit users and roles page, is create the view, because we have the functionality there. So now let's create our edit role razor information. So we will be creating a new razor class in our administration folder called edit users in role. Boom. So Visual Studio is creating that. We're already passing in the edit role view model. And we'll create our form that will be updating our users associated with the role. Let's post, and let's add in our margin top. This is Bootstrap. Okay. Div class form group role. So let's create a role to format our beautiful HTML. Label ASP4 ID. So we're going to first display the ID on our new page. Equals call -sm-2 all form. This is just some Bootstrap. So we create the label for the ID in our model. Now div class call sm10 input ASP for ID and it's disabled because we can't modify this class equal to form. We finished our first input. Let's copy that and create the second input that could actually be modified. Actually, I was just writing out the code for the wrong page. The page we're actually creating the information for. I was rewriting the edit role razor syntax. Let's create the syntax for our edit users and role. So div class is equal to card. Okay. Div class is equal to card header. H2 add or remove users from this role. Card class is equal to card body at for int I is equal to 0. I is less than model.count I plus plus. Equal to int I is equal to 0. Oops. For check m dash 1 margin of 1. Input types equal to hidden. ASP4 is equal to 12.9 dot user ID and input types equal to hidden. So we're having the user's information. 4. I'll explain what this is for later. User name. Finally, input ASP4 model.is selected. This is our checkbox. Control input okay, and last but not least we need the user's name. So this input will be associated with the select box above. SP4 this is a label. Label. And the name of the label is going to be okay. So what happened here? Why is there an error line? It's because we're not referring to the right view model. So this is user role. Okay. Oops. Capital U. It's case sensitive. And model.count. Okay, so what happened here is that we were iterating through the actual users. And this would be a list of user role view model that we're getting here. Okay, so we're iterating through all the user role view models that we're passing back from our controller. So if you recall here, we were adding to our model each and every time, which is a IEnumerable user role view model, the individual users and whether they're selected. Next, what we did is iterate through them and display that in our form. We're automatically generating our form. And we're hiding the following inputs: the user ID for each of the users as well as the username. That way when we post the form, it'll get that information. And then we have our model is selected, which will determine whether our checkbox is checked or not on the page that we'll be displaying and we'll be looking at in a moment. This form controller should be checked. Check input. This will automatically tell Razor that this is the actual checkbox. Let's look at our user role view model. Is selected, and model of I is selected. Okay, and for this particular input, we also associate the label model.username. But this is not a form input, so it won't be committed if we were to press the submit button, which we're going to create in a moment. Okay, so now that we have the actual contents of the form that will be displayed, let's create the buttons for submitting that information. So let's create the div class card footer. Create an input, type is equal to submit, value is equal to update, class is equal to btn, btn primary, style is equal to width of auto, and we've created our update button for updating the users associated with the role. And we also want the ability to cancel that in case they came to this page by accident. So let's redirect them to edit role if they've made a mistake to implement the cancel button. We'll also have to pass in the ID information. If you recall before, that caused an issue. And we will create the button.primary, because this is a button, and style will automatically resize based on the size of the window. And cancel. Okay, so now we have finished implementing our actual page. But we're missing one more thing. We didn't get our role ID, so we can declare in our Razor syntax a role ID is equal to viewBag.role ID. Okay, cool. And are we passing in the role ID in the front? And we got to verify that. Yes. So if it has a role ID there, delete that, and we should have gained the ability to edit the users associated with the role. Go to user admin, edit role, edit users and role, and as you can see, we haven't implemented the link to take us from this page to the next page. So we have to add in that information in our edit roles view model. Okay, I mean edit role view. Okay, so we're going to implement the link. As you can see, the link wasn't implemented here. And in order to do that, we just specify the controller. Next, we specify the route information. So go to at model.id. And the action method. Okay, so we added the action, the controller, and the route information. Now we have the link to our edit users and role page. Edit role, edit users and role. Odd. Could have sworn I saved it. Oh, it's because there are no users in the role, so we have to add this button down here. I might have edited it wrong. Yeah, this should go over here. And we'll add in the information. Okay. Okay, so we've changed it so that it links to the edit users and role, that button, the correct button. Whew. Okay, edit the users in this role, and it'll take us to the edit user and role page. But nothing's displaying, so let's inspect the element and see what happened. Edit user and role. So we'll go to the edit user and role user information and take a look at what's going on. Edit users and role, and we called it edit users and role. Edit users and role. The link is edit user and role. So add the S, stop it, play it, go to user admin, edit role, edit user and role, and we have an error.